I've been a long-haul trucker for going on 20 years. You get used to the late nights, the empty roads, the weird radio chatter. Most of it becomes background noise after a while, trucker slang, weather warnings, the occasional joke. But there's one night I still think about every time I turn the key in the ignition. It was early November, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was hauling refrigerated freight across I-70 through Kansas, a lonely stretch, especially after midnight. There's something about that part of the country that feels hollow, like the wind's been blowing through it too long, carrying the sound of things you aren't supposed to hear. It was about 2:30 a.m., clear skies, no traffic in sight for miles. Just my headlights slicing through an ocean of darkness. I had channel 19 open on the CB like always, but it had been silent for a good hour. No surprise, that section of the interstate gets real dead after midnight. Out of boredom more than anything, I flipped over to channel 22. Not a channel anyone usually uses. It was quiet for a moment, then I heard it. Breaker, breaker, any unit, come back. The voice was weak. Male, definitely. Full of static, but there was urgency behind it. He sounded out of breath, panicked. This is, Rig 341. I'm out near mile marker 212. Anyone copy? I'm not sure where I am. Something's wrong. I think I'm being followed. I leaned in, flipped the mic. Come again? This is southbound 8 to 7. You said 212. There was a pause. Then more static. Yeah, 212. Near the rest pull off. But there's no lights out here. I don't see any cars, but I know there's something. It's been behind me since Selena. Now, that stretch near marker 212? There is a small pull-off there. Nothing but a trash bin and an old payphone, rarely used. It's tucked between rows of wind-beaten grass and crumbling pavement. Most guys skip it entirely. I radioed back. You in a jam? 341? You break down. The signal cracked again. I swerved. I think I hit something. My trailer's jacked up. I'm off the road. I need help. I don't. Then silence. I tried responding again. Got nothing. Static, like the signal had been swallowed. My gut told me something wasn't right. Maybe a drunk driver ran off the road. Maybe someone was messing around on the CB. Either way, I was only about 15 miles out from the marker, so I figured I'd check it out. I slowed down when I got near 212. There's no overhead lighting out there, just pitch black Kansas night, and the sound of wind moving through grass like whispers. I turned down the volume on the CB and eased onto the pull-off. That's when I saw it. About 30 yards down a shallow ditch, caught in the beam of my high beams, was an overturned semi. The trailer had split clean at the seam, like a jackknife at hard. One wheel was still slowly spinning. The whole thing was rusted to hell, streaked with brown, windows smashed out, covered in dust like it had been sitting there for years. But I swear to you, I heard it creaking, metal groaning like it had just landed. I grabbed my flashlight and got out. I walked down the ditch, boots crunching over dry weeds and gravel. The air was cold, and everything felt wrong. Still, not quiet like peaceful, quiet like dead. No bugs, no owls, no wind anymore. I shined my light into the cab. Empty. There was dried blood on the steering wheel, but it wasn't fresh. Spider webs hung between the gearshift and seat. A dead bird was wedged under the brake pedal, all bone and feathers. I stepped back, confused. That trailer, it wasn't just old. It was decaying. The license plate was barely hanging on, caked in dirt. I scraped some of it away. 2010 tags. That didn't make sense. If this was the truck I heard on the radio, it couldn't have been sitting here for 10 years. But then, what the hell had I heard? I climbed back up to my rig and tried hailing again on channel 22. Breaker 341? You still copy? You there? Nothing. Then, as I was about to give up, I heard that same voice again. But this time, it was wrong. The tone was slower. Flat. Almost like someone was trying to imitate the original call. This is Rig 3-4-1. I'm still here. I froze. I see your lights. I killed the CB. The hair on the back of my neck went straight up. I turned off the cabin lights, reached over for the glove box where I kept my flared gun and flashlight. Then my engine cut out. Not sputtered, cut. Everything went dark. I was left sitting in silence, staring out at that overturned trailer in the ditch. And that's when I noticed the back doors of the rusted trailer were open. I hadn't seen that before. I was sure they were closed when I walked past it. Then something stepped out. It was hard to make out. Human-shaped, but tall. Too tall. Lanky. The way it moved down the side of the ditch didn't look right. like it didn't have bones, just angles. It was heading straight for my truck, moving slow, but steady. I fumbled for the ignition, praying it would catch. Nothing. I grabbed the flare gun and aimed it through the windshield. I didn't want to shoot unless I had to, but this thing was getting closer, 10 feet from the cab. I could see its face now, or where a face should have been. Just smooth, pale skin, like stretched wax. Then the CB crackled back to life. "Don't leave me here." That voice again, not through the speaker this time. From outside, right next to my window. I fired the flare. The blinding red light lit up the whole cab and everything around me. In the second it was airborne, I saw it clearly. The thing outside was wearing part of a trucker's uniform, tattered, stained. The name patch on the breast said Mitch. One boot, one bare foot, hands too long, like they'd been broken and healed wrong. It didn't flinch when the flare hit the dirt beside it. It just tilted its head, then turned and walked slowly back toward the trailer. I didn't wait. I slammed the door locks manually and tried the ignition again. This time, the engine roared to life. I peeled out of there, tires kicking up gravel, heart pounding in my throat. Didn't stop driving until I hit the next truck stop over an hour away. I told a guy behind the counter about what happened. He gave me this look and said, "You said Channel 22? That's bad luck, man. There's been stories since the 80s about weird calls on that channel out here. Guy named Mitch went missing just past Salina back in 2010. They never found him. Said he'd swerved to avoid something. Ran off near marker 212. I didn't respond. Just nodded and left. I've never flipped over to Channel 22 again. And I sure as hell don't stop near mile marker 212. Sometimes, though, when I'm out on that stretch late at night and everything's real still, I swear I can hear a whisper through the static. Breaker, breaker, you still there? Story 2. I'm a long-haul trucker. Been driving the lower 48 for over 20 years, and I've seen my fair share of weird. Fog that moves like it's alive. Hitchhikers that vanish when you blink. Even a guy who swore he'd been on the same stretch of road for 2 days straight. But nothing ever stuck with me like what I saw on Highway 95 outside Grangeville, Idaho. It was late September. The kind of cold that creeps under your nails, even with the heater blasting. I had a run hauling produce from Spokane down to Boise, and I decided to take the back highways through the Palouse. That stretch gets real empty after sunset. Rolling fields, silos, the occasional lonely farmhouse. But mostly just corn and wheat, stretching forever. About 2 hours in, just past midnight, I started seeing scarecrows. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's harvest season. Farmers put them out every fall, sometimes just for decoration. The first few were classic, flannel shirt, straw hat, arms out like a cross. But they were everywhere. I started seeing one every mile or two, always on the right side of the road, like they were watching traffic. I remember one that was dressed in camo, with a plastic deer skull mask tied to its face. Another had a traffic vest and a blinking light duct taped to its chest. I laughed at that one. Figured some bored farmer was having fun. But then I passed one that had bare human hands. No gloves, no straw, just pale, knobby fingers sticking out from the sleeves like someone shoved a real person in there. I slowed down, looked again in the side mirror. Still just standing there, arms stretched out, no movement. I shook it off, told myself I was tired. I'd had 2 energy drinks and hadn't eaten since Coeur d'Alene. Probably just seeing things. But a few miles later, I saw another one. This one had jeans and a red hoodie. But what caught my eye was the shoe, a tan work boot with a broken lace flopping off the side. It looked exactly like the boot I saw on a guy back at the gas station in Riggins, maybe 90 minutes earlier. I'd noticed it because the guy had been limping, dragging that bad foot behind him when he went into the mini-mart. Now that same boot was tied to a scarecrow. I leaned forward, peering at it as I drove by. It was on a wooden post, slouched a little, like it was heavy. I looked into my mirror, and it moved. Not a lot, just a tiny shift of the head, like someone turning to track you as you pass. I didn't slam the brakes or stop. I just kept driving. But my hands got sweaty on the wheel, and I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see it following behind me. About 20 minutes later, I saw lights up ahead, a field being harvested under big mounted floodlights. One of those late-night farm operations. Giant combine crawlers moved through the wheat, slow and methodical, like iron monsters. I figured I'd pull over for a quick break near the entrance, catch my breath. There was a dirt pull-off just past the farm's edge. I eased the truck over, parked, killed the engine, and sat there listening to it tick and settle. The field was off to the left, lit up like daylight. I could hear the low drone of machinery and the occasional rustle of wheat. Then I noticed something weird. The scarecrows weren't just out by the road anymore. There were dozens of them, staked through the entire field, between the wheat rows. Some were near the combines, almost too close. I watched as one of the machines passed just feet from a figure in a cowboy hat, arms stretched high. The machine didn't stop. The driver didn't react, just kept crawling along. Then another combine made a wide turn and passed within inches of a scarecrow wearing what looked like a wedding dress. Still, no reaction. Not even from the figure. I was about to convince myself it was all just props, maybe part of some rural art thing. When I looked in my mirror, there was a scarecrow standing on the shoulder of the road, closer than any of the others. I swear to God, it hadn't been there when I parked. It was facing my truck. I sat perfectly still, one hand slowly reaching for the ignition. But before I could start the engine, the scarecrow took a step forward. Not a twitch, not a wobble, a deliberate, fucking step. I turned the key, engine roaring back to life, slapped it into gear, and peeled out of there, spraying gravel. In the mirror, the scarecrow was still coming, now joined by another. Both just walking down the shoulder, side by side. I floored it. Hit 70, then 80. The mirror showed nothing but dark road. I kept driving until I reached the next town, didn't even stop to piss. Just parked behind a 24-hour diner and sat in the cab with all the lights on until sunrise. By morning, I convinced myself it had all been a hallucination. Stress, lack of sleep, a trick of the light. But then I saw the local paper. There was a small article buried in the back. A farmhand had gone missing from a property near Grangeville 2 nights earlier. Said he'd walked out into the field for a smoke and never came back. Police found no sign of him, except for a pile of clothes neatly folded by the road. What stuck with me wasn't the disappearance. It was the photo the paper ran beside the article. It was meant to show the field where the man vanished. But way in the background, near the far tree line, I saw a figure, arms outstretched, wearing a red hoodie and tan work boots. Only one had a broken lace. Story 3. I've been driving long haul for almost 14 years, mostly overnight routes through the western states. You get used to the monotony, endless road, low hum of tires, that weird metallic smell of diesel and vending machine coffee. It becomes your whole world. But there are still moments that shake you awake. And one night last September, something happened that's still messing with my head. I was running a freight job out of Reno, headed for a distribution center just outside Denver. Standard haul boxed consumer electronics, sealed and locked. I'd driven that stretch of I-70 more times than I can count. It was around 1:30 in the morning when I started hitting that familiar wall. Eyes burning, twitchy hands, micronods creeping in. I hadn't seen another set of headlights for over an hour, and the road was just winding black ribbon, stretching forever through the mountains. That's when I saw the sign. White reflective letters. Rest stop 16B, 1 mile. It didn't register at first. Just another marker. But then something tugged at me. I didn't recognize the name. And I know that road. I know every official pull-off, truck scale, and rest stop between Silverthorne and Glenwood Springs. But this one? 16B? Never heard of it. Still, I figured maybe it was new. The DOT adds those things now and then. And honestly, I needed to take a leak and splash water on my face before I drifted into a ravine. So I pulled in. The lot was lit up like a stadium, bright halogen lamps throwing long shadows across the concrete. No other vehicles. No litter. No graffiti. Everything was immaculate, like it had just opened yesterday. I remember thinking it looked like a movie set version of a rest stop. Unreal in how clean it was. The only sound was the high, constant whine of the lights and some distant wind coming down off the peaks. I parked in the center truck bay, killed the engine, and climbed out. My boots echoed on the pavement. The air smelled sharp and piney, more like a national park than a roadside pit stop. The building itself was small, just one structure, restrooms and vending, with a covered bench out front. The automatic doors slid open the moment I stepped onto the concrete pad. Inside, same story, spotless. Not just clean, but polished. Bright floors, silent hand dryers, even the urinal cakes looked brand new. No flickering bulbs, no weird smells. Not even a bug in sight. I did my business, rinsed my face, and stared at myself in the mirror a moment. My reflection looked a little hollowed out, pupils blown wide. I splashed again, trying to shake the fog. When I stepped outside again, I froze. My truck, my Peterbilt, was gone. It took me a second to really register it. For a moment, I thought I'd parked in a different spot, or I'd come out the wrong exit. But there was only one truck bay, one lot. And in the exact same spot where I'd parked, there was a truck. Same model, same cab color, same trailer, but it looked different. It was gleaming, freshly washed. Tires what like it just came out of a bay. Chrome polished to a mirror. I walked up to it slowly, heart pounding like I was walking into traffic. The license plate? Same numbers. Company decals? Same more patterns. Even the little hula girl on the dash was there. It was my truck, but it wasn't. I yanked open the driver's door and climbed in. The seat was dry. The cab smelled like lemon cleaner, not sweat and coffee like usual. My coat was still hanging on the hook. My thermos was in the cup holder, but the cab felt reset, like a display model made to look lived in. That's when I noticed the logbook. It was sitting on the passenger seat, my handwriting, my initials, but the entries were different. Wrong. They said I left Reno 6 hours earlier than I had, that I'd already made 3 drop-offs in Salt Lake, Rifle, and Aspen, places I hadn't been anywhere near on this run. The times were tight but plausible, like someone had planned out a perfect delivery schedule as if I'd done it. My pen strokes, my abbreviations, even a little ketchup stain on the edge of the page from a burger I ate 2 nights ago. I slammed it shut and jumped back out of the cab. The rest stop was still empty, still quiet, but now it felt like a stage set under 2 bright lights. I pulled out my phone to call dispatch. No signal, not even a bar. Tried my GPS. Nothing, just a spinning wheel. I looked around for a sign. Something, anything. But the original rest stop sign I saw pulling in, the one that said 16B, wasn't there anymore. I walked the length of the lot. Nothing but that one building, one lot, one truck. My truck. Or not. I stood there for what felt like 20 minutes, just breathing, heart thumping. Eventually, I told myself I must have pulled into a detailer's by mistake. Some sort of maintenance swap or something. Maybe I nodded off and someone cleaned the rig as a joke. The explanation didn't make sense, but it was all I had. I climbed back in. He was in the ignition, like always. I turned it. Engine fired right up. Everything ran normal. I backed out, checked my mirrors, and pulled back onto the interstate. And that's when I saw it. In the side mirror, as I merged back onto the highway, the rest stop, it was gone. Just trees and rock face. No lights. No turnoff. Like it had never existed. I white-knuckled it all the way to Denver. Next morning at the depot, I asked dispatch about the stop. They pulled up the routing system. Rest stop 16B? Not in the system. No DOT record, no coordinates. I asked some of the older drivers if they'd ever seen anything like it. Every single one shook their head. But that wasn't the worst part. The manifest. When they opened the trailer, it was already empty. Every pallet logged, delivered, signed for. Just like the logbook said. Problem is, I never made those deliveries. I didn't drive to Salt Lake. I didn't stop in Rifle or Aspen. But the logs were stamped. The signatures matched the names of warehouse managers I'd never met. Dates were correct. Security footage showed me arriving on schedule. I should have reported it. I know that. But how do you explain something like that without sounding insane? They paid me. Standard rate. No flags. I still drive nights sometimes. But I avoid that stretch of I-70 now. If I see a sign for a rest stop I don't recognize, I keep going. And every so often, I check the rear view for something that shouldn't be there. So far, nothing's followed me back. But sometimes, when I'm parked in a lot with other rigs, I'll catch a glimpse of one that looks exactly like mine. Same scrapes, same rust. Like a mirror parked one bay over. And once, last month, I found a second logbook tucked behind the passenger seat. It was filled out in my handwriting, for a route I hadn't taken. Yet,